Hey, what's up, Wukong mains? Welcome back to this fuckfest of a video series. I've been taking my sweet time with this video because I felt like it needed some more attention. I wanted it to be less opinionated, and that's basically the gist of it. Please note that this is not a hate video, rather constructive criticism. Anyway, let's get into it. First and foremost, we hit 1500 subs. You fucking legends. Thank you all for being here and being a part of the last 6 months of my life. It has been quite a wild ride, with its ups and downs, but I can't express how thankful I am for the community that surrounds itself around these garbage videos. Huge shout out to everyone in the Discord as well, for being the chill dudes and dudettes you are. Secondly, I would like to mention that despite the title and the thumbnail, I do not hate the game, or the developers, / people working at DE, and mean no harm to them. I feel like I have to mention this, because with the last video my frustration with this silly game got the upper hand. I also don't want to shit on the community too much, because that will get its own separate video soon. Please be aware that this is a multiple part video series. If you haven't watched the first part, I urge you to do so by clicking on either the card on the top right or using the link below. Also, if you're new to the game, please do not watch this video. It's neither intended for you, nor do I want to spoil your fun, so click off and watch whatever other videos there are. This video is directed to people who have either played for a long time, created content for the game, and or have been with the game since the beginning. I'm not trying to gatekeep, this is me ensuring you don't get influenced by negativity. Alright, annoying but necessary intro out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty of why Warframe sucks, where it went wrong, why older players are leaving, and why the content creation surrounding this game is so fucking negative. It's safe to say that Digital Extreme started Warframe with the best of intentions, trying to get their passion product across and working hard to ensure it becomes a reality. Over the years there have been countless displays of DE asking the community, working closely with their partnered content creators and ensuring a prosperous future for the game and the community. While not all is bad, obviously, and even to this day a select amount of people are heard when it comes to advice and feedback, etc., it's not what it used to be, and certainly not how a basically crowdfunded game should operate or interact with its community. This ties in directly to the partner, or dare I say content creator program and favoritism, but I'll come back to that in a separate video, because it's too big of a topic. You see, back in the day, DE used to listen to its community more. That's how we got bullet jumping, several rework ideas, and a lot of bugs were fixed. Simply due to the community being listened to, and in turn rewarded for their efforts. Nowadays, even the forum is a wasteland. It feels like Digital Extreme stopped caring about what the community wants and how they feel about particular changes / new ideas the company comes up with. This has now been an issue for multiple years, and little to nothing has changed.
What? What the fuck?
You can clearly see how disconnected the developers are from the community if you've watched some of the latest dev streams, where they explain that the way Warframe is now, and where it's heading, is exactly what they want, or how they envisioned it. The community, though, as far as the people I've spoken with are concerned, disagree completely. Or take, for example, the open test servers, which were created to test new major updates and gather feedback in order to bring about a better update. But DE simply ignored the hundreds of comments in the test server section of the forum and moved on with what they feel was a solid update nonetheless. Now of course you could say, but Swag, you sound like an entitled little brat right now, wanting the big boy company DE to listen to you. I disagree. With a lot of free-to-play games, the community brings about the most creative part of a lot of the games. Literally live testing builds and major changes, like for example League of Legends, where the developer Riot takes the majority of its feedback into consideration and actively communicates with its partners / content creators. Warframe was like that. The devs have asked the community for feedback on multiple occasions, and it's not a secret that the Warframe community as a whole has by far the most insane ideas to improve the game out of any group of gamers I've seen before. Of course, a large portion of those ideas are shit, but most of the ideas are well thought out and exciting. With me addressing the issue of DE not listening, I want to clarify that I want those people to be heard. I couldn't give two shits about my ideas making it through in the game. Of course it would be cool, but I don't see myself in the position to make claims, or feel entitled to, as a dude who makes dumb videos on a video game, to be heard by its developers. I very clearly stated a few months ago, or by now probably a year ago, that I will not apply for the creator program, simply because I want to remain unbiased and completely separated from the developer to be my honest self and avoid any favoritism from any direction. Now, in my 1,000 subscriber video, I mentioned the possibility of me applying. However, since that video, I've decided to never apply as a final statement. However, again, I'll touch on the content creator program thing in a separate video, or rather the next video. However, all this talking about the past is the perfect segue to my next point. Warframe as a whole is not better off in 2021 than it was in 2020. Or for that matter, 2019 or 2018 even. Now again, you could argue, but swag, new frames, weapons and some other things have been added which shifted the meta, etc. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, has Warframe become a better game in 2021 compared to the previous years? In all honesty, no, not really. There haven't been any significant gameplay updates, meaning in terms of mission reworks, replayable content added, irreplaceables added, etc. Simply said, Warframe as a game is the same as it was in 2018. We still defend a cryopod for endless waves without a real reason why. We still slaughter countless of enemies in a survival mission without meaningful rewards. We still open ribbons in the hope that we get at least something unique that only you have, so you can get some actual value out of it. And we still have the same unrewarding, borderline boring and stale gameplay loops we've had for years now. With the exception of disruption, like I mentioned in the previous video of this series. Even the new railjack missions are basically just space taxis to our regular fucking missions. What Warframe needs to become a better game as a whole and to reach the next level is replayable, fun, and rewarding content that incentivizes a player to come back again and again. There are enough examples of DE completely failing at this aspect. You only have to look at the plains of Eidolon, Fortuna, and Deimos. 3 updates, which all took an insane amount of effort, time, and money to create, are all but dust on our Tenno windshields. Because after obtaining the things we need from it, like warframes and weapons, etc., we never really come back. Unless you're a madman like me and actually enjoy watching the scenery of Cetus and the plains, and play it for nostalgia's sake, or hunt islands and the like, but I digress. There's no reason to ever go back after you've gathered the main rewards. Sure, you could go back to grind your balls into ball powder just to get every floof or build every kitcon, etc., but what person with at least some form of a social life would do that? It also doesn't help that Digital Extremes has consistently shown snippets and trailers of new updates to then wait multiple months to even years in order to release them. Which brings us to our next point. As with all games, some amount of hype is natural, to bring in new players and to get existing players all excited for the new shit that is about to drop. With games that have all what I mentioned before, it's not that big of a deal if updates take longer. Hell, it's even applauded if they are released later, but are actually finished and in a polished state. But Warframe can't have that, because Warframe lives off of big announcements and reveals. A quick look at the Steam numbers shows the sad reality of players coming back in during TennoCon or when new updates are announced/released. Insane trailers are created that both take a lot of time and money to create just to impress us. Big boy content creators are paid to promote the game, while they know nothing about the game and potentially only drive short-term players to the game. However, where my understanding for a hype train reaches its end is when a developer releases a trailer of something upcoming, especially when it has major lore implications and could change the game significantly for the first time in a few years, only to then not release it for another year, or in the case of the Duviri Paradox, not talking about it for almost 2 years. Or have we already forgotten that the new war was announced in 2018 and still haven't seen anything besides 3 prologues and some railjack improvements? It's a vicious cycle that forms around E3, TennoCon, and other big outlets for game developer companies every single year. Announce big things that will happen somewhere in the future. However, in the case of Warframe, somewhere in the future can mean up to 2 years later, which is laughable, to say the least. How can you reliably bring out big update after big update, if you can't even get smaller copy-paste updates to work consistently, or make sure that a subpar update like the last one, which took 7 whole months, doesn't need 10 hotfixes in order for it to not be completely game-breaking. DE is quite literally working itself into a backlog and crunch period with every update, because they are released unfinished. You then rely on PC players to test these builds for you unofficially, so you can port the polished version to console. Now what does this create? It creates content drought between updates. Longer periods of time in between updates are called content droughts. Players who will simply leave and only return for short periods upon update release, annoyed longtime players, confused new players who wonder why the community is upset or just don't know where to start, backlogs, an insane amount of bug reports, and lots of videos from content creators. The latter being mostly negative due to the nature of the updates provided, whilst promising something completely different upon announcement. Now I'm not saying the game is dying, because despite what everyone is saying, the numbers show a completely different thing. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check the Steam chart numbers yourself, but Warframe is still in the top 20 and is currently doing fairly well. Alright, next topic, because honestly the hype conversation is tiring as fuck. Now let's take a minute to talk about mods. What makes Warframe unique in many ways is the ability to change builds on a whim. The modding system is fairly easy to understand once you get the hang of it, and apart from missing information here and there, it's fairly simple to check how certain mods affect your setup. Otherwise you can, check my channel or use the fucking wiki. It's definitely not one of a kind, but it's special in its own way. Where DE fucked up, however, is the sheer amount of mods available. There are currently 1,183 mods in the game, which by itself is an incredible amount of customization. However, when you start to understand how the modding system works and what mods are basically mandatory for most weapons, you'll find yourself with little to no variety. So, what are most mods for? What added value do they bring to the table other than being some kind of a band-aid mod or only usable in edge cases mod? Melee builds have seen little to no variety since the last status/melee rework. Most guns have the same builds, and secondaries are currently almost exclusively used as primers. Now, while I personally enjoy the status applicator use of a lot of weapons and base my playstyle around that, I can see a major flaw in this. Having only a handful of mods to pick from, which will actually benefit your gameplay, is restrictive, and leaves you wanting for more and asking why the hell there are so many mods. There's no real application for them. At the current stage, the modding system is simply bloated, making customization close to artificial, even though that's not the case. Now, obviously, this isn't just a modding issue, but ties into how damage is dealt, received, etc, etc. And what about those mandatory mods? We all know almost every gun needs damage, multi-shot, crit damage, and crit chance. That's 4 mods taken up from the 8 you have already. Sadly, even with the Axelis mod slot, which most players I know don't even use because it's seen as a waste of resources, your choices are very limited right now, as the current meta has been there for a while now and probably won't change anytime soon. So, I don't know about you, but for me, Warframe has always been a power fantasy game, and I think a lot of people would agree. A game where I can be the most overpowered motherfucker in the star chart. A game where weapons are hopelessly busted, in which the whole fun in taking them with you is seeing the enemy wither before you. So why, for the love of Cthulhu, does DE think that Nerf City is a good place to be in? I mean, for crying out loud, Warframe is a PvE game at heart. Calling upon Warframe's PvP abilities is like calling Animal Crossing a hardcore shooter. It's just ludicrous to balance weapons like a PvP-centered game would. It shows that the direction headed is still unclear. Pick a road and stick with it. Stop punishing players and nerfing the fun weapons as if it would have any major impact on how we play the game. Warframe is a game where it quite literally almost doesn't matter what frames and weapons you pick, and can still make it to the absolute level cap units without breaking a sweat. This also edges on the topic of melee versus gunplay. In Digital Extreme's eyes, gunplay is seriously lacking, and melee is way overpowered. And I know that a lot of people agree with them. Oh, yes. Because they nerfed the scaling guns into the ground and made enemies that are nothing more than bullet sponges, doesn't matter what level they are. You also gave us mechanics to completely fuck over all defenses enemies have, to then just strike them with one press of the E button. Humans are programmed to take the path of least resistance. So of course, if melee hopelessly overpowered, player is going to use melee, because it's easier, gets the job done quicker, and requires practically no aiming skills at all. Sadly, just bringing up guns to the level of the melee prowess we possess will not suffice. Not even close. But why is that? It's fairly simple to explain. What the fuck are we going to use these overpowered guns on? Don't get me wrong, I like killing hordes upon hordes of enemies like any next guy. But Warframe's identity isn't clear on that, and therefore the enemies are either weak as fuck, or have preventive mechanics like nullifiers and ancients that are still easily cheesable. Nothing in the game requires us to have even stronger weapons. Where do you want to take it? So we can one-shot level cap enemies now with guns? We already can, so what's the point? This is where we get to an opinion-based segment of this video. In my opinion, the resources spent on trying to balance this fuckfest are better spent improving the enemies, making new enemies that are harder to kill or possess mechanics, properties we actively have to get rid of before we can kill them. This will in turn require special modding, which could be an opportunity to clean up the bloated mod system, and catch 2 birds with 1 stone. Actually, 3 birds if DE also decides to wrap this all up in a fun and engaging gameplay loop with worthwhile rewards. I will touch upon the future of weapons and what I personally think should be done to avoid weapons being underused versus overused in the next installment. Because I don't want to make these videos too long and I don't want to get too much into detail. With that said, please do keep in mind that these kind of videos take an excessive amount of time to create, since first, I need to fact check literally anything I say or you guys will skin me alive. Second, I want to be as accurate as possible while providing some form of entertainment. Third, prep work and research, talking to other people, etc, etc. So if I don't release something every week the coming time, it'll be because I'm literally slaving away at writing a script over and over until I'm happy with it. Sadly, my internet is not back to normal yet, so I don't see myself streaming in the foreseeable future. However, do like the video if you did like it, subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode of Why Warframe Sucks, and yeah, that. And again, I mean no harm to the developers, staff, game, community, its content creators, etc. I simply want to list the reasons why Warframe as a game right now sucks for players in my position, and start a conversation between players and developer to hopefully help make Warframe a better game than it ever was. Stay safe out there, Tenno. Later.